please welcome to the stage, Caspar Berry.
Thank you, Stuart. Thank you very much indeed. Welcome to Great Call, risk-taking and decision-making in poker, business and life. So, poker, investment, poker. What are the similarities between our two worlds? I think if we sum it up in one word, it's risk and risk-taking. Of course, when we're playing poker, we're taking risk, and we feel that physical effect. It's quite subtle at first, but there's an increased heart rate. We sweat a little bit more. Sometimes that's visual from the outside. If someone has a good hand in poker, here's your number one tell, their hand will shake because their heart is pumping to prepare them for battle, for movement. That's what we're doing. Bluffers, if you're bluffing, they will close down. They'll tend to become very quiet. They'll touch their face increasingly. It's called the Pinocchio effect. They'll touch their nose. So, of course, what we all want, we see it in the books, don't we, and the films, is the poker face. That's the holy grail. That's what everyone talks about, the poker face. Actually, these days, we don't worry too much about the poker face, because if you want to cover up, we've got the cap and the shades, and that's legal in most poker rooms. That's going too far, all right, folks? We want to see a nice fair game. But hopefully you get the point. Our worlds are quite connected. I actually learned my first lesson about risk when I was very young. We go back 40 years ago now. Every Sunday, me and my dad, we go boating on our local boating lake. Picture the scene, very idyllic, sunlight streaming through the trees, father-son bonding happening there on the lake. And then one Sunday, all of that was thrown into jeopardy because someone had an accident. I don't know exactly, to this day, exactly what happened, but it was enough to throw our council into a panic. Did they have the necessary insurance? Were they going to have to put lifeguards around the lake? They didn't know, but being a council, they sprung into action. They erected a sign. I'll never forget this sign. Had a picture of a man falling out of a boat and into the water. And underneath the picture were the immortal words, "Remember, boating is fun until death occurs." Now, I don't know to this day how appropriate that is for boating, right? But it's very appropriate for risk-taking. And it made quite an impression on me as a young man. Risk-taking is fun. There's no doubt about it. When we're investing, certainly gambling, sport, in all its forms. I don't know what that is. But it looks like they're having fun there, no doubt about it, until death occurs, right? In all its different forms. I'm talking about catastrophe. I'm talking about loss. I'm talking about just injury. Sport is very dangerous, by the way. If you take one thing from this presentation, you don't even have to be playing sport. You can just be watching. Look at the statistics if you don't believe me. That is not what I wanted in my life. At the age of 26, I decided to take my risk in the safe, quiet comfort of a poker room. And when we're playing poker, hopefully we're having fun, but we are definitely taking risk. But I want to argue that if we're doing it properly for 20 years, if we're putting food on our family table, if we're a professional poker player, we're not gambling. Now, I know that makes me sound like I'm in a bit of denial. All right, I'm used to this. So let's just calibrate our terms. When we do anything else in the casino, we are gambling. All right, what do I mean by that? Well, hopefully we're having fun because that's what we're paying for. We're making a series of investments. We call them bets, but they're allocations of a scarce resource under uncertainty, which can win. No doubt about it, on any given spin of the wheel or turn of the card, but which will, in the long run, lose. Gamblers lose. 4 tests there, 4,000 iterations, all of them go broke eventually. And why is that? Well, it's because we're playing against the house, and the house has set up those games in such a way that we will lose in the long run. Look, they've got a lot of real estate to pay for. They have to do it somehow, all right? But that makes the poker room different in kind to every other part of the casino. Because when we're playing poker, we're not playing against the house. It's fundamentally different. We're playing the other players around the table. You're never going to be banned from the poker room for winning $1 million because you didn't win it from the casino. You won it from the other players. But that's poker, right? That's a very brief introduction. And what I want to do in a moment is sort of bounce off that and say, okay, well, what can we take from that and apply to the rest of our lives? But at this point, I'm just going to invite any questions from the room about poker, about being a professional poker player, or indeed my time as the poker advisor on Casino Royale. So does anyone have any questions at all? Yes, AI, here we go.
All the stats, all the probabilities, then everybody will make rational decisions.
Yes.
So will the game change, or will then the bluffing will be more important?
Fantastic question. So essentially, what is going to be the effect of AI on poker? And it's going to be huge. It's going to be radical. So let me give you a bit of background. Does everyone here familiar with the game backgammon? Backgammon, it's played with dice and counters on a board. Think of backgammon as like poker with your cards up. All right, so all the information is available at any given time. So there was a computer programmer, a guy who created a program called Snowy, right? And Snowy was able to tell us the perfect play for any situation in backgammon. By Monte Carlo analyzing all the different potential outcomes of the dice from that point of view, there is a perfect play, okay? And Snowy killed online backgammon because, quite simply, if someone's play too closely approximated Snowy's, they were just banned from the site because it was deemed that they were cheating, okay? Now, that guy tried to create a computer program for poker, okay? He tried for several years to program it algorithmically. He was a keen poker player to play perfect poker, and he couldn't do it. There's been lots of bots for a long period of time, but AI is different. This same guy then started with the blank sheet, okay, and just taught it to learn using the neural network, the machine learning process. And after 2 trillion hands, those AI programs are now better than the best human players, okay? So your question is, with them playing online, what's the outcome? And it is exactly what you think it is. Online poker is now sort of pointless. And the bottom line is that online poker is going to die. And what's happening in poker is a resurgence in the live game, which is interesting, right? Now, with multimodal AI and, embedded into glasses like Meta's Ray-Bans and things like that, who knows how long it is before it's playing perfect poker in the live game as well. So it's going to have a massive impact, there's no doubt about it. In realms where decision-making, resource allocation has to be done, AI is changing from this little seed right now. It's going to be huge and profound. And in a way, poker is kind of like the canary in the coal mine on that front. So great question. Who knows exactly what the future holds? Fantastic. Okay, right. Well, so that's a bit about poker. Big question really is, all right, I can see that, we're all taking risk, but exactly what's the similarity between our two worlds? And I'm going to come back to a phrase that I've used already now here, which is resource allocation under uncertainty. That's the whole deal. That's what we're doing when we're playing poker and investing. We're allocating scarce resources under uncertainty with the aim of making a return on our investment. So this thing called uncertainty, it's profound. It's embedded into the fabric of our world. Why in 2023 is that even a thing? Well, in poker, it's quite easy. It's quite obvious, isn't it? It's a randomly shuffled deck of cards. It sits in the middle of the table. And it doesn't matter if you're the greatest player who's ever played the game, you have no idea what the next card is going to be. It's quite a small thing, by the way, but it's going to have a massive impact or effect on us playing this particular game. And we have a word, don't we, for that idea in business, life, and science. We call that the butterfly effect, this idea that a tiny thing can have a huge impact or effect. And I don't know about you, but I think we've seen more vivid examples of the way the butterfly effect has played out in our society in the last 20 years than maybe ever before. One person set fire to himself in a Tunisian market stall in December 2010, precipitated the Arab Spring. One captain, Kant Havel, decided to do a wrong maneuver in the middle of the Suez Canal, disrupted the world's supply chains. And I think we've all lived through the most profound example of the butterfly effect in the last 4 years because one person made a dietary choice about 4 years ago in Wuhan. And as a result of that, the value of the world's finances fell by 30%. And that was how we knew our friends and family. And that was the toilet paper aisle, at least in England. Was it the same in your respective countries? And we all learned a new word, didn't we? PPE, very important. There wasn't enough of it. And we had to improvise. And some people got very creative, kudos to them. And some people just stuck a scouring pad on their face. And that's fine, right? Whatever worked for you. The point is, stop for a moment and consider that. One person, and literally our entire lives changed all across the globe. How on earth can these experts predict the future accurately when something so small, such a tiny butterfly, can have such huge and profound impacts and effects on us? And if you're thinking into this right now, you probably don't like it, because what I'm actually saying when we break it down is that we are less in control of our lives than we might like to think. And that is actually robbing us of something that we all need. Maslow tells us right at the bottom of our pyramid of needs, we need safety, security, shelter. It's down there with our basic needs: food, water, warmth, obviously Wi-Fi if he was doing his pyramid today, let's be honest, chargers underneath that, am I right? What's he saying here is we all need a sense of certainty and control over our lives. There's nothing to be ashamed of. We have wanted them as a species for 6,000 years, and that's why during that time, we've created certain tools to create at least the illusion, and if not the reality, of that control. The first pieces of writing on clay tablets in Babylon 6,000 years ago were laws, still the basis of a civilized society today. We have procedure and rules which contain us. We have the health and safety industry, and I know it's frustrating sometimes, but thank God we do, because it has saved hundreds, thousands of lives in that century. How? When you think about it, by catching butterflies. That's what we're doing when we put up those signs. Signs and laws in many ways are stopping us from doing things, aren't they? They're creating guide rails. Everything is banned in this location, leaning against the wall, carrying a violin. I have no idea where this might be. I'm fascinated. This is an actual sign from a Japanese toilet. A lot of the things down the bottom there, I've never tried, to be honest with you. I don't know that has tried, to be honest with you. Probably not a necessary sign on balance. I know now the people who put these signs up, and they have our best interests at heart, but maybe the sum total of all of them is that we get a bit scared to try anything different, to take a risk, because all we see around us is danger and warning and caution. Surface is hot, and there it is again in Braille, ladies and gentlemen, in a conductive metal, causing more accidents than it's actually preventing. But we're trying. And by the way, of course we should, because we have created the safest world we've ever lived in by any metric or definition. I'm not saying we shouldn't try and catch butterflies. What I am saying is we're never going to catch them all. And we sort of know that, don't we, deep down? And that's why we have a second tool to pull out of our bags when we need it. And of course, that is prediction. And we've been doing that for 6,000 years as well. The early belief systems were based on the idea that some people had a hotline to the gods, and we put those people on pedestals, and we said, tell us what the future holds, and we paid them a lot of money. And you might think this is a bit silly and archaic, but we still pay people a goodly sum of money to predict the future for us. Billions of dollars are invested every single day on the strength of these kind of predictions. This is the Bank of England's actual prediction as to what the UK economy would look like in 2008, based on their perspective at the time of 2004. And I think the first thing we can all agree about this is they've given themselves some wriggle room, haven't they? Hey, the old Bank of England there. I mean, they've got top people working on this. This is a very clever way of going, I don't know, to be honest with you. I've done this for the Bank of England. They were great. There was a guy sitting here. He said, it's a shame we ran out of shades of green, really. We could have carried on going. And they would have, because the Bank of England actually understands something very important, right? Which is that we need to work with probabilities. And of course, in poker, that's all we've ever had, because that next card is going to be the ace of diamonds or the four of hearts. And there's nothing that we can do to know or control that. So we go in with a series of calculations. They're exactly the same calculations that are used millions of times a day here in the square mile. They're the origin of the phrase, the calculated risk, and they look something like this. If there's $4,000 in the middle of the table, and it's going to cost us $400 to call, we're going to make an estimate as to our probability of success. Let's imagine that it's 25. In poker, it's a very high volatility environment. That doesn't look and feel good. But if 25% of the time we make $4,000, then each time on average we're making 1,000. If 75% of the time we're going to lose our 400, then each time on average we're losing 300. And that creates an overall expectation or value of our upside plus our downside, which is $700. We never make $700. We either win 4,000 or lose 400. But at the end of that magical medium term, we're left with the sum total of all of those values. In fact, divide that value by our investment, we get a massive return on our investment of 175%. This is a great call, even though we're going to lose or fail 75% of the time. And that's quite a difficult pill to swallow. But actually, when we look around in life, particularly areas where statistics are kept, like sport, for example, we see this all the time. Babe Ruth, greatest baseball player of his generation, hit more home runs than anyone else in history. He also hit more strikeouts. That means by two different metrics, he was both the best and the worst player of his generation. I put it to you that wasn't a coincidence. Jeff Colvin did research into ice dancers in the United States because some of them seemed to win all the gold medals. And he wanted to know what correlated with that, what explained that success. Parental profession, upbringing, no. Hours spent on the rink, yeah, pretty good because practice makes perfect. But the single strongest correlation he could find was the number of times they fell over during practice. Again, short-term risk, setback, maybe even failure, long-term success, more of the metric that matters. Think about when we tell stories of great people in our world, they tend to be people who show resilience, don't they? But how do they show that? Seems to be because they pick themselves up after a series of profound setbacks. Abe Lincoln failed in business in 1831, defeated for legislature in 1832, second business failure 1833, nervous breakdown 1836, confined to bed for 6 months. But he gets up, thank goodness, and he's defeated for Speaker in 1838, and defeated for Congress in 1848, and defeated for Senate in 1855. And maybe give this up now, Abe, because maybe this isn't for you. No, he's defeated for Vice President in 1856, and defeated for Senate again in 1858, before finally being elected president in 1860. And that's what we remember him for, that long-term achievement, that home run. But maybe you only get to achieve that if you're prepared to strike out that many times along the way. He was assassinated in 1865, all right, folks, which does show that risk-taking is fun until death occurs, okay? So we need to be very careful. We need to draw that line of unacceptability and say no to that. That's what risk management is about. Of course, this presentation is not about doing stupid or dangerous. You can find all sorts of stuff on Google Images if that's what you want. It's not about that. It's about saying to ourselves, okay, in life, where can we push that envelope in a way that no one's going to get hurt, but in a way which is only useful if it increases our long-term returns? Maybe it's good sometimes to pitch that new idea or to challenge this status quo. Not because people will definitely say yes, they won't. It is a risk. But maybe the people that get more of the metric that matters in their life, they do that. Warren Bennis, professor of leadership at Harvard University, did a study of, the great super leaders, the Bill Clintons, the Bill Gateses, 40 years of his life. And he identified 4 characteristics for those people which seem to separate them from mere mortals. Number 1, more optimistic and positive. That's why we've talked about that for 20 years, his work. Number 2, more consistent to their values, true to their beliefs. Number 3, successful. People wanted to follow them because they were successful. Number 4, lied to, let down, and screwed over more often than most people. Feels, again, counterintuitive, doesn't it? Why would that be? Well, maybe if you want to run Microsoft or America, like many of you here in this room, I'm sure, you have to trust 10 or 100 people. And maybe 5, maybe 10, maybe 20 of them will let you down. You'll strike out. But maybe you get more from the other 80 that don't than if you don't trust any of them at all. And we can go through our lives insulating ourselves against that pain, and it's always painful in poker and business and life. But maybe we're actually sabotaging ourselves by the metric that matters when we do. Thank you very much indeed.